Hello, my fellow whiskey fans, and it's time for another whiskey comparison. And today we are going to be looking at a couple of oddballs, actually. And I say that because they don't really follow strictly the way that their country tends to do whiskey. We're going to do Auchentoshan. Show you how that's spelled. If you've never heard that before, and you're going to see that label, and you're going to say, whoa, Auchentoshan. Okay, that's what it's called. We're going to try out Auchentoshan American Oak, and that is triple distilled, which is what's considered the Irish tradition of distilling. But it's a Scotch whiskey, and let's look at that label again. I just got through doing a episode of Whiskey Lore, the podcast, about the difference in the spelling of whiskey and where that came from, and who does it one way and who does it the other. You'll notice the Irish whiskey spelled with the E. Okay. What's interesting about this is that this is partially done in the Scottish tradition of single malt whiskey. Now, of course, single malt whiskey is done all over the world, but usually when we think about single malt, you kind of go back to Scotland as you start. So it's funny, they're kind of role reversing. And I was really interested in trying out both of these side by side because of those differences. Now, Writer's Tears is 46% alcohol. This one is 40% alcohol by volume. Fairly close. You can see by color that Writer's Tears, a little darker. I say this is a -2. This is -1 on my Walker scale. Okay. And the reason that one's a little darker, these are both non-age statements, so not really sure how old the whiskey is inside the glasses. But probably one of the main reasons that one is darker is because it has actually been double aged. It's been aged in American bourbon and also in French Cognac casks. And that French Cognac is probably what's given that just a wee bit more color than the other. So Writer's Tears, actually I'm going to talk about that first as I pick up the Auchentoshan. Writer's Tears, I was kind of interested in where that name came from, and it's related to the way that they make the whiskey, which they say is a 19th century style. I haven't dug into this, so it may just be marketing, but it's a nod to the whiskeys that the authors Bram Stoker and Oscar Wilde were probably drinking in the late 19th century, early 20th century, a combination of single malt and pot still, single pot still, which is the way that it's referred to in Ireland. I've not seen the single pot still method and how that is done, and one of these times on an Irish whiskey episode, I'll see if I can cover that in a little bit more depth. But I'm going to jump in, I'm going to nose both of these, kind of get into this. And what's interesting about this is the first time I smelled it, the Auchentoshan, I was like, that is very peach, which I had never smelled in a whiskey before. It's got a light vanilla to it, a little bit of a toffee. Now, I'm actually not going to drink it right away. I'm going to take my little pipette here, and I'm going to put in 1 milliliter of water. And the reason I'm going to do that is to open it up a little bit, and because after doing a tasting the other day, I realized, interesting, the nose actually fades when you put water in there, but the flavor bursts. So a little bit of water in there will work, but it's interesting how it actually closes that. It feels like it's closing that whiskey down. All right, we'll jump over to the Writer's Tears. Get my hands all working the right way. All right, now this one was the hardest one for me to smell. You can see the legs on there. Both of them are pretty much medium in body. But this one, man, I had the hardest time pulling any smells out of there. And there's no sweetness to it or anything like that. So let's try to get this. And piquettes are awesome. If you don't have one, you should get one. Much better than a teaspoon, because you can be a little more accurate in how much you're putting in there. Swirl it around a bit. It doesn't make a huge difference, and I think it's because the smells that I get out of this, you really got to drag for, and it's more, there's a little cinnamon in there, but there's smells you're not used to, like a musty wood smell, and there's a little leather in there, but they're very faint. All right. I'm going to taste this one right now. How about that? That's just a delightful way that just milky waves over the palate. But it's fruit. I think it's from the cognac. There is definitely like a dark fruit, dark berry kind of thing that goes on there. It is rich. I mean, not rich in the way of sweet rich, but I mean, it is flavorful. But the hard part about it is, it's hard to tell what the flavors are. It's like there are bursts of flavors coming at me, but I'm not 100% on top of what it is that I'm tasting. So plum is big. I do taste the plum in there, which I thought was interesting. I think you say pear actually on the, but I don't get this. I don't get that sweetness of a pear. A little toffee maybe, but it's fruit and berry. It's fruit and berry, and after you dig into it once, you want it again. There's a little orange rind in there, a little bitter. Then it has kind of a ethanol to it as it starts to fade. It's a nice, clean, fresh fade. There's some cherry in there actually as it starts to fade out. The orange rind, some light pepper in there. Yeah, I mean, this is the reason why I taste things twice before I do the show, and this is the third time that I've tasted this, is because the first time I tasted it, I was like, I don't get it. Why would anybody like this? It's just, I can't pick anything out of it. But the second time I went to it, I was like really concentrating and focusing and enjoying and just being at one with it. And it got so much better today. Wow. I mean, it does reward you when you first get it in your mouth with just this amazing, full flavor, whatever the flavor is. That's really weird. You're tasting something and it's all over your tongue. But I don't have a wide enough palate at this point, I guess, to be able to pick out exactly what it is. But plum is definitely in there. Dark fruits, some dark berries. I would say that's where we're going with that. Auchentoshan. All right. So, really enjoyed the tour at Auchentoshan. It's outside of Glasgow. And they do triple distilling, so you get to see the 3 pot stills. So, whereas the Scottish method is normally to do 2 distillations, they go one step further in the Irish tradition, which this Scotch distillery is doing, and it kind of mellows. Used to be that Irish whiskey had a really great reputation when Highland malts were still very young. Excuse me. And so with that, you tended to get Irish whiskey, that lighter flavor was considered to be more refined. And then, as I'll talk about in my podcast episode, Scotch whiskey went to blends when it was legal to do so, blending blending grain whiskey with single malt, and that helped sort of mellow it out and bring it down into the Irish whiskey range. So anyway, you learned a little bit here. You can learn more in the episode. This one picked up its peach a little bit more again as it rested, and somebody told me that you should let this rest for a while. And I truly believe that, because I just poured this not too long ago, and that peach on the nose and the vanilla are coming out a whole lot more. Now this one has an interest. Watch my face as I drink this. It has a creaminess, and the flavor, it takes about 2 seconds after it's on your palate, and it goes, hello. Yeah. It's very clean. When you're used to drinking single malts, this triple distillation does really pull it back a bit. And yeah, it's a little lighter on the ABV, but I don't think that has much to do with this. There's a little bit of bitterness in there. What's funny is after you drink it, you'll get the orange rind on the tongue, and you'll get a sweeter orange on the nose. Both of these are spicy as they come to the finish with a little pepperiness, but not aggressive. And again, I think that's because both of them go through a process that helps pull that heat out. What's interesting is on the finish of this, you get grapefruit. So it goes from this orange, it goes from peach to orange, and finishes off in grapefruit. And I think that's the sourness coming out. It's citrusy, and a little black pepper. Oh, but I mean, all right. After my first tasting, I was flat out. Writer's Tears was out. I didn't get it. Auchentoshan was the clear favorite. This has become a whole lot closer, and to be honest with you, I'm going to side with you guys on this one. I'm going to go with the Auchentoshan by a hair, because I think in your voting it was actually a little further bit apart, like 45 to 55%, but I would say it's even closer than that. Both have their own personality to them. The double oak cognac is just interesting. It's a lot different than anything I've tasted before. So I don't think you'd go wrong either way with these. I think they're both excellent whiskeys, but I would put a little bit of water in each one. It makes that flavor really just jump out at you. Doesn't do much for the nose, but if you let this one sit for a little while, it'll start to pick up a little bit as you go. So hope you enjoyed that. As always, leave me comments if you think one whiskey is better than the other. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that as well. And we'll be back with another American mixture coming up. Another tasting of American spirits coming up in the next episode. So thanks for watching.